For breakfast, we're starting with a quick, no-cook breakfast, but first let's make some coffee. I've been really into making cappuccinos recently, and as you can tell, I still have a lot of practicing to do when it comes to frothing the milk, but it still tastes delicious. And for my breakfast, I'm having one of these little rusk breads with some cheese and some apple. And of course, I was hungry about an hour after that, so I'm having another rusk bread with cheese with the rest of the apple. And then another snack/breakfast. I've been in a very snacky mood lately, as you'll see throughout the video, but yeah, making some avocado toast. So I scooped out half an avocado, mashed it with my fork, and then I also chopped a few baby tomatoes. I seasoned my avocado with salt and pepper and put some lemon juice on top. I added my slice of toasted bread and then I added my avocado on top. I topped with the baby tomatoes, and then I love adding some hemp seeds on top, so I sprinkled some. And then for the side, I'm having one of these little flavored yogurts. I chose the peach flavor, which was so good. And I also chopped up a few strawberries to have on the side too. Then another snack later on, I had a small packet of these baked crisps. And then lunchtime, James is making one of my favorite dishes, which is steak and chips. So he put the chips in the oven, and then onto prepping the steaks, he added some olive oil seasoned with salt and pepper, and then massaged the spices and oil into the meat. He's also making some greens for the sides, so he washed some kale and broccoli and chopped it up. He then added it to a pan with a splash of water to cook them. He added some garlic, a bit of olive oil, and let them cook for a few more minutes. He's also cooking up some mushrooms to go with the steak, as that's such a good combo, so he's chopping them up in slices and then adding them to a pan with some olive oil to cook. He also chopped some onions in slices, added them to the mushrooms and let them cook until the mushrooms were cooked through. He also added the steaks to cook, and while they're cooking he also made a coleslaw by shredding some cabbage and carrot. And now we're ready to eat, so of course I'm adding loads of chips on my plate, coleslaw, and then of course the steak that I topped with the mushrooms and peppercorn sauce. And that was a 10 out of 10 meal, it was so good. For dessert, I'm having some cheesecake, as we had some leftover from the day before. Again, James made it, and this recipe was so simple. I think it took him 10 or 15 minutes. He started by crushing the biscuits. We use hobnobs as they are far superior to digestives. Let me know if you agree on this. And then he added some melted butter on top of the crushed biscuits and gave the mixture a good mix. He then added the biscuit mixture in a tin and patted it down. He put the tins in the fridge and then made the cheesecake filling, so he's just beating the cream with the cream cheese, and because he knows me too well, he also added some lemon zest to make it lemony. He topped the biscuit base with the cheesecake filling and used the back of the spoon to make it even. As you can tell, we've been really enjoying the cheesecake, so I'm cutting another slice for myself. I like to top it with some berry jam, although we often make a homemade berry coulis just by stewing some frozen berries with a splash of water and a tiny bit of sugar, but I was too lazy today, so I'm just adding a bit of jam, and this was so good. Cheesecake is definitely one of my favorite desserts. And today was actually Pancake Tuesday, so I'm making some pancakes for dinner. To make the batter, I added some flour in a bowl, milk, a couple of eggs, and a bit of salt. I whisked it well and then let it on the side to rest for a bit. For my savory filling, I'll be doing cheese and mushrooms, so I'm prepping my mushrooms so they're cooked. I just chopped them up in thin slices and then I added them to a pan to cook for a few minutes. And now on to making the pancake/crepes. I added a bit of batter in my pan and then added a big spoon of the crepe batter. I let it cook for a few minutes and then flipped it to the other side. I then topped with some grated cheddar and some mushrooms. And then a bit more cheddar, because you can never have too much cheese. I had one of these for my savory, and then moving on to the sweet ones. And this is actually James, but I thought I'd show you to give you some options as well. So I'm doing a big spoonful of Nutella and then spreading it around, and I always do that on the pan as the Nutella starts melting, and it's so good, trust me. And I'm crumbling up some biscuit on top and then folding it in half. I served it on a plate and topped with some fresh strawberries on top. And then for my sweet one, I actually couldn't decide, so I'm doing half and half. For one half, I'm spreading some Nutella, and then for the other half, I'm doing the classic English combo of sugar and lemon. So I added some sugar and then squeezed a bit of lemon on top, and these were delicious. I love pancake day. Next day, and for my pre-workout, I decided to have a couple of these rusks with some honey on top. I just served 2 on my plate and then topped with my Greek honey, which is so tasty. I love thyme honey as it's so flavorful and it smells amazing. Let me know if you have a favorite honey in the comments below, by the way. And for my actual breakfast, I decided to try this ready-made tiropita, aka cheese pie. And even though I love to make my own filo and pies, sometimes it's nice to have these ready-made ones for when you're feeling lazy. So I just baked it for about 40 to 45 minutes and it's ready to enjoy. So I'm cutting myself a big piece, although spoiler alert, I ended up going back for more as it was so good. And a good old classic tiropita breakfast is not complete without some fresh orange juice on the side, so I'm serving myself some from a local green grocer that sells freshly squeezed juice. Obviously, if you're not lazy, you can squeeze your own orange juice as well. So I just did my workout. I'm too hungry to shower, so I'm gonna try some now. So I went to an international supermarket and I found so many Greek stuff. I got very excited. Tiropita is so exciting. So good. Oh, it's like what you would get from a Greek bakery. And with some oranges, I'm happy. Great combination. Try it. So good. For lunch, I think we've established I'm having some lazy days, so I'm making the quickest and easiest meal I could think of, which is tacos. I started by chopping a couple of tomatoes in small pieces, and then I'm using this carob rask, so I just ran it under water and then added it on my bowl. I then topped with all of my tomatoes. I added some olive oil seasoned with salt and then topped with lots and lots of feta that I crumbled with my hands. I then topped with some oregano and lunch is ready. For dinner, we were having my in-laws visiting, so both my parents were cooking for dinner, so we're starting with one of my dad's specialty, which is melizzano salata, aka an aubergine dip. He put the aubergines in the oven to roast for about an hour, or until they're fully cooked and soft, turning them halfway there. When they were cooked, he took them out of the oven and let them cool down so they're cool enough to handle. And while we wait for this to cool, he's prepping the rest of the dish, so he peeled some garlic cloves and then he chopped them up really finely. Yeah, small intermission for a cheese snack, as seeing other people work makes me hungry. Okay, back to the aubergines. He's now peeling them and adding all the aubergine flesh in a large bowl. He did that for all the aubergines and then mashed them up with a fork. He added some garlic, olive oil and seasoned with salt and pepper. He gave it a mix and then we also added some red wine vinegar. Another mix, and he's adding a handful of walnuts that he's crushing with his hands. Finally, we're adding a bit of feta in it, so he's just chopping it up in small pieces and adding it to the bowl. And my family never cooks with the recipe, so they always eyeball things and go by taste. I think it's how most Greeks cook, so here comes the taste test. Yeah. So my dad thought it needed a bit more feta, so we added a bit more and gave it a final stir. And then for our main dish, we're making pasticcio, as I was craving it for a while, and we actually found some pasticcio pasta on that international supermarket. We're starting by making the meat sauce, so my mom is grating an onion, and then any big pieces that couldn't be grated, she's just chopping up in small pieces. We then added some olive oil in the pan and added the onion to saute for a few minutes. Once it was translucent, she added the minced meat. We're using beef, but you can use whatever you like. Even veggie mince I've made pasticcio with, and it tastes great. She's now just stirring it so you can get a nice coloring all around, and once it was fully cooked, she added some tomato paste and some passata. For spices, she's adding a cinnamon stick and a couple of bay leaves, and also seasoned with salt and pepper. She gave it another stir and let it stew while we prepped the rest of the dish. She then added some boiling water and then added the pasta into boil. I think traditional pasticcio pasta is number 3, so these weren't as thick, but they were still good. While they're boiling, my mom is making the bechamel, so she's adding some butter and some olive oil to a separate pan and let it melt. She then added some all-purpose flour to a bowl and slowly added it to the pan with the butter and oil, whisking it well. She then added the milk and continued whisking. And as I mentioned earlier, we always cook, we call it metomati, aka just eyeballing, so she decided to add a bit more flour, whisk it again, and then a bit more milk. Another snack for Kiki, and then back to the bechamel. Once it was almost ready, my mom is adding a bit of nutmeg and seasoned with salt and pepper. And finally, she grated a bit of this kefalotiri and also added it in the bechamel and gave it a final stir. And now onto the assembly. She started by adding some pasta on the bottom of the pan. She then topped with all of the mint sauce and spread it around evenly. She added a bit of bechamel on top and then topped with another layer of pasta. And then the final layer is the bechamel, so she's adding it on top, spreading around evenly. And for a bit of crunch on the top, she's also crushing a couple of these rusks with her hands and spreading them around evenly. And she then added a bit of kefalotiri cheese all around the top.
Γεια χέρια σου. Πολύ ωραίο τυρί.
We then put the pasticcio in the oven to bake for about 30 to 45 minutes. And while it's baking, we're making a quick salad, so we got some lettuce on a bowl and then added some baby tomatoes and also chopped a bit of big tomato in medium pieces. My mom is also chopping some cucumber and onion, so like a variation of a Greek salad. She added some olive oil, vinegar and seasoned with salt, and then gave it a good stir to coat all the veggies in the dressing. So just serving the salad and aubergine on the table, and now our pasticcio is ready, and look how perfect it looks. This was so good, and there's something so comforting about your parents' home-cooked meals. Let me know in the comments what's your favorite family recipe, by the way, I would love to know. And then for dessert, I actually had some leftover crepe batter, so I'm making a crepe for myself. And this was a bit of a flop when I tried to flip it, but you can definitely spread it and try and fix it and mend it. I've done it so many times and it always gets back into the round shape. So once I flipped it again, I added some sugar and some lemon juice. I folded it in half and served it, so it's ready to enjoy as my dessert. It's the next day and I'm having a couple of these rusks with some cheese. I usually have Edam, by the way, in case you're wondering. And since I had some leftover juice, I'm serving some in my glass. And that was breakfast, very quick but so yummy. For lunch, I had some leftover pasticcio, so I'm warming that up in the oven. And while it's warming up, I'm serving myself some salad, so I'm doing some lettuce here, added some olive oil, vinegar and salt. And once my pasticcio was warmed through, I'm serving it on the side. And this was so delicious, even on the next day. I just love pasticcio. After lunch, I wanted something sweet, and my parents brought me this amazing Greek chocolate, so I had a few squares of that. And then another snack later on, a small packet of these baked crisps. And then for dinner, are you surprised? I wasn't in the mood to cook, so I'm making myself a Greek sandwich. I had this leftover bread, so I'm cutting a bit off and then cutting the rest in half. And since I went to make a sandwich, I'm removing some of the inside so I can have space for my filling. I then chopped lots of baby tomatoes in half and then added them to my sandwich. And for the one slice of bread, I'm adding some olive tapenade and spreading it all over the slice. And for my feta, I actually found the Epirus brand on that supermarket, and of course I had to get it, as that's what I got when I lived in Greece. I just sliced it in thin slices and added them on top of my tomatoes. I topped with the other slice of bread and my sandwich was ready. And I love having a simple dinner like this sometimes, especially when I don't feel like cooking and I want something cold and quick. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and got some inspiration for some yummy meals. If you did, make sure you give me a big thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, and if you made it this far into the video, comment a tomato emoji. Okay, bye!